right, so let's analyze our games. So this is my first ever on the board tournament. Never played in a tournament before, didn't know what to expect. I go in there, I didn't bring a board, which apparently you're supposed to bring. You're supposed to bring your own board and clock, which I don't have. Yes, it was a UCSF tournament. Yeah, USCF tournament. That's correct. So it was held at the University of Utah, and they do this weekly. So they do this 3 times a week. So it's something that I'm going to make a regular habit of going to. So I'm unrated at the current moment, and we get into the first round of 4. And so my first opponent is a 15, I think he was 1584 rated player. He's an older guy, probably in his 60s, and he played very slow. So the time format for this tournament was 15 minutes with 5-second increments, which if you know me, I'm not used to playing that slow. So in this first game, I had so much time on the clock. So in the first game, I went E5 and he went E4. And for some reason, I thought this was like an England Gambit or something like that. And so I go with D4 right off the bat, doing my Smith Mora, because this is what I usually do against the Sicilian. It was kind of a gut move. He takes, and then I went to F3, not realizing that I needed to go up to C3. And he's really confused because this guy who plays the Sicilian obviously knows about the Smith Mora Gambit. So he takes 2 minutes for his next move of going knight to c6. In the 2 minutes leading up to this, though, I'm realizing that I could just play into the Smith Mora. So what I do is I play into it and we get into the Smith Mora Gambit. He pulls up to g6 like you're supposed to. I keep developing like normal. I castle, he brings out his knight. I'm winning at this point. I'm up 1.2. I bring the queen in like you usually do with the Smith Mora. He goes d6 and I go rook to d1, putting the pressure on this file. He does the book move of going queen to c7, which is where you bring your bishop here, pinning the pawn to the queen. And I think at this point, he's at 9 minutes left on the clock, and I'm up above 15 because I know the opening to a T and I'm just playing it. So either way, I get to this bishop pinning the queen situation. He castles, and I said, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm going to punch up and make my piece trades. Apparently, this wasn't a good idea because he takes, I take, he takes, I take, and I'm threatening on the bishop. We're at an exactly equal position at this point. He pushes down here. I'm thinking that this is going to come down and take the free pawn. I completely forget that this queen has this pawn at all. And for some reason, I'm like, okay, I got to protect this pawn. I'm going to put here. And this is exactly where the game went south for me, because after that, he goes bishop to g4, x-raying the queen and the knight, and I get so flustered. I don't know what to do at this point. I know this guy's a much better player than me at this point too. He's been playing for a long time, much higher rated than I am even online. And so I panic. I think about this for probably a minute, which is long in my case. And I throw just a check. I throw a check on the king, thinking maybe something might open up if I just open this check up. He takes there. I can't take the bishop. And so I kick the queen out. I'm like, fine, take the rook. I'm going to pin that queen, the rook to the king here. From here on out, he just methodically just tore me apart. I'm down 8.5 points at this point. Another thing I'm trying to do is this is the first time I'm ever writing down my moves. And for some reason, I keep forgetting to write down his move, and I keep writing my move in there. So I had the paper and I had the whole game, but this is all I could decipher from the notes. I could not figure out what his next move was for some reason and couldn't get on the rest of this game. But my position didn't get much better from here, and it was a decisive game 1 loss. I felt pretty good because I was winning up until the pawn push, right? Because let's look at the game review. We'll start the review, and it's just book, I'm doing great. And then he's making the inaccuracies, which gives me the advantage. And then I make this inaccuracy. The move I should have made in this position was actually just go and attack the queen right away. So if he takes, I take, and I'm now attacking the knight. And then he makes the other inaccuracy. And then I just make this blunder, and that's when it all goes south. I probably designed another 10 moves later, just because I knew there was no chance that I was going to win this. Round 2 was a little better. This guy was rated around the 900s. So at this point, there's 9 tables in this tournament. And if you're on the far side, you're if you're on table 1, you are the best players. That's where they put the best players, and they put the worst players on table 9. By round 2, because I was unrated and I lost my first game, they put me on table, I think 8. I wasn't even on table 9 yet, but I'm playing this 900. I'm blacking this. He goes e4. I go into my Caro-Kann. I'm like, great. I know this. I'm gonna go into the Caro-Kann, and he goes into the advanced variation, which I'm super excited about because I love playing the advanced variation in the Caro-Kann. So the bishop comes out and he starts attacking right away. I retreat. He comes over here to f4, and so I push up this pawn looking to retreat my bishop. It's not a good idea. What I should be doing instead is I should have put my bishop here on e4 and not allowed this advance of pawns. But it does. I come out here, he brings the queen out. I start, you know, doing the usual things you see in this position. I try to close out there. He brings the bishop in. I block it with a knight. He takes it and we trade off queens. And I kind of breathe a sigh of relief at this point, like, hey, his attack is over. He's kind of overextended on the pawn, so that I just need to like make some moves here. And he simplifies the pawn position, which I'm like, great. I actually have a slight lead at this point. And it just gets worse from here because I take the free pawn. He castles. I'm going to try to push there. He brings the knight out. I take the pawn. This looks great. I have this bishop here. And so I say, hey, I'm going to pin this knight and not allow that knight to take it and develop a piece. Why not? He brings that knight out, unpinning the knight. And for some reason, I completely forgot about this. Play the knight out here, and he takes my bishop. I then take, he takes back, and I have this nice little fork. He then goes and attacks the fork, and I don't have, and I messed up on writing my moves down at this point too. But at this point, I ended up blundering this knight and this pawn. And so I completely lost this game as well. I think it comes down to, I'm used to playing in a 2D plane. And so I see the board in this way and it makes a lot of sense to me. And then when I played on the over the board, you're seeing it in a 3D plane. And so I feel like I was missing some things that I normally would see on the screen. That with the nerves of playing on my first tournament, the fact that I had to write down all the moves and the fact that you have like the touch like rules that you had to follow, it was a lot to like take in all at once. And I think I just like didn't play well at that point. So I lost 2 games right off the bat and I'm feeling like crap because that guy I should have beat. So I go into my third game and I'm now at the losers table. I'm on table 9. So I'm at table 9 and I'm playing this guy that's James. He's also unranked and I go in with my e4 repertoire looking to go into the Rui Lopez. He goes to the Caro Con instead and I say, great, I know this. I'm gonna go with the fantasy variation. And he gives me the big center, which is great. I now have the fantasy of having the center locked up for myself. He then pushes up to e6. I push my knight to ef3, and he goes and attacks my pawn right away because it's fortified by this bishop. And I say, whatever, have the pawn. Cool. I'll put the king in check. The knight goes there, and now that I have the pin there and I have the knight here, things are looking good for me. He tries with with the queen. I just take it and put the pawn there. It's not like he can take here because it's guarded by this knight, and he retreats back. And then I take the bishop, and he's got to go here. Cheers. So he goes here. Can't take here because I just forked the king and the rook. So he brings the bishop out here, trying to start something trying to like defend with the knight. I then push up the pawn, attacking the queen because my knight is guarding that. Queen moves. I then move my knight here to e7, attacking that queen. The reason being is I have this attack on the bishop, and if he takes my knight, I can take his bishop and completely blow up the whole queen side. So what he does is he takes my bishop, which is an obvious blunder. I take the queen and it's kind of over from there. Like he tries to he tries to attack my queen right away. I bring my bishop out and then he just moves the bishop so I get the free rook. And then by this point he's completely flustered. He takes my rook. Pieces are coming off. Like we're just moving around. We're trading. And I move here and then he realizes that I have this guarded. I take there and he moves and I take the bishop and he resigns. So I finally won one. That's my first official over the board win in a tournament and I'll take it. I was feeling good. I was feeling good about this. It's an exhilarating feeling winning in a tournament. So I win the 3rd round and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling saucy. We're going into round 4 and I'm playing someone that's rated 850 and I'm like, oh, I got this guy. I'm going to crush him. I'm going to win. I'm going to finish 2-2. I'm better than my play has been. So we go e4, e5, and then I want to go in the Rui Lopez, but he goes to the Petrov. And if you guys know me, I hate the Petrov. I just hate it. So I refuse to play it with all my life, and I go knight to c3, and he goes bishop to c5. At this point, I say, hey, why not? I'll take the pawn and see what we can do because this is covered. He goes for the pawn. I bring my knight back. He then goes for like a fried liver attack, but it doesn't really work because I have the pawn here covered by the knight and the queen. And so that doesn't really work. He retreats the bishop back. I try to kick out the knight. I just develop at this point and castle. He castles as well. I bring a4, which I realized was not a good move. I should have pushed b3 first and then a4 because he just did that and it kind of like stopped my queen side attack. And so I just kept developing my pieces. He pushes c6. He's obviously looking to go here. but I push up anyways. And he takes my bishop, and I take with the F pawn, opening up this file. I figure that's a good trade for me. He then closes the position, which is quite annoying with his bishop. I can't really utilize it too much. So I push up the knight instead and trying to open it up. And I thought instead of trying to take here, I'm gonna close up the position and push up here later on. Because this isn't protected by a pawn, it's gonna be easy to take later on. He brings in the queen, and I attack it with my rook right away. He then will retreat, and then I take the pawn, and I got a good forward attack coming. I got this bishop barreling down on the queen still, like soon. Like, I think things are gonna be looking good. He takes that pawn there, and I take the pawn here, which was rated, I think, as a brilliant move. Let's look. It's on the 18th move. So this 18th move is a brilliant move. And I remember because if you take here, I could take here or I can pin it. But I didn't think of the pin at the time, and I just took. Because I should have opened this up and pinned, because then there's no way you can move the rook, and I take the rook for free. That was like the obvious move, but I missed it. And after the recapture, it's like not the best. So from that position, he takes to the king. I check with the queen, thinking I'm going to win a free knight here, not even realizing that he can bring the knight back here on f6. And I bring my rook over here to e1, trying to get some attacking lines open. I'm thinking next move, I'm going to drop this. But I think I was a little too late to it, because by the time I checked, he goes really far back. And my lead of about, what was it, 8 points a move ago vanishes to about 1. So he retreats. I attack with the knight, attacking the rook. I should have taken the rook, but instead I threw a check, thinking, hey, if he takes this, maybe I can take here and get my queen involved. Like, I don't know, try to figure out something. So I'm trying to get the checkmate here, but instead he throws a check, trying to take my bishop, and he's successful in that, because what he does is he brings this back, protecting this move here. So what I think is, hey, you can take the bishop, but now I have this checkmate. He then throws the check there, and I throw the check there. I try to stop it. He takes the knight, and it's looking like my chances are slim, because now this checkmate's gone. And at this point, I'm like, let's keep the queen. The point control has swung completely in the opposite way to 14, and we played this out for a while. But in the end, like, he had 3 pieces to my pawns. I ended up resigning. So that was my first over the board tournament. I was 1-3. I was kind of disappointed, but looking at the analysis after the fact, I realized I was winning so many in the opening games. I just need to convert in the middle games, and that will completely change the dynamics of how my tournaments will go from here on out. So I'm excited on Saturday to play another one, and I'll let you know the update on that next week after I do the tournament. So that's the first over the board. Jake says, were people generally good sports on over the board? I think they were. I think it was really, really cool, because after we played each game, we went down and broke it down on the board, like what people's thought processes were, why they thought certain things. And everyone was really nice, and it was, I thought, good camaraderie. Yeah, it was interesting, because like, I think the best player there was like an 1850 rated player. I think he ended up winning the whole tournament. And I think I got 14th out of 16th on my first ever. So there's 2 people that didn't beat the guy I beat, and then some guy that lost all his games were the 2 people behind me. And yeah, that's it.